sense. Let's say hello to Tom Tugendhat. Good morning, Tom.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. I'm all right. I'm saying that the papers this morning seem to be rather unusually pleasant and good to Keir Starmer. I found watching that whole sort of hypocrisy fest yesterday in the Oval Office a bit cringe-making, to be honest. And I know that, you know, for Britain, some people will say, well, you know, it doesn't look bad that Britain are side by side with the Americans, and they're sitting there and it's all very friendly. I mean, I never thought for a minute that Donald Trump would humiliate Keir Starmer. Why would he? But I find it partly, I suppose, because Starmer's been so anti-Trump in the past. I just found it all a bit over the top.
Well, look, Mike, I mean, I share many of your thoughts. I just want our Prime Minister to have a good relationship with the President of the United States. It's really important for all of us. It's incredibly important for our economic future. It's incredibly important for our security. So, frankly, I'm just pleased that the relationship has kicked off well. Look, you know my thoughts on Keir Starmer. You don't have to tell me what he's been like in the past. I don't like the way that he's been leading the country, and I didn't particularly admire him much as leader of the opposition. But I'll tell you what, we do need a strong relationship with the United States, and whatever he's daftly said about presidential candidates in the past, it's good that he's got over his own well, how can I put it? His own personal views,
yes,
and is representing us in.
But is there not also a reflective moment on that? And I take your point, and I understand that, you know, if it's Team Britain that we're on, you know, obviously yes, we want to.
You're on it, and I'm on it. I mean, we both.
Well, we are.
Yeah.
But also, I don't want to see Britain being sort of partially, I don't know, denuded to some extent by having to sort of prostrate ourselves in front of a president in order to gain his kind of his affection, you know, to sort of bribe him with a letter from the king, to sort of, you know, keep touching him on the arm and say, you know, we're all mates here, in an effort to just try and get him on side. Because you know as well as I do, Donald Trump is a pretty unpredictable guy. You know, I don't take the view that he's agreed at all that the Chagos deal is good, which is what the papers are saying this morning. He doesn't look as if he's agreed yet either about the tariff situation. He certainly hasn't agreed yet on what happens in Ukraine, which I know will be a subject that you want to talk about. You know, exactly where does it all go from here? I mean, it may be a good start, but has anything actually been decided?
No, frankly,
yeah.
And I've been speaking to friends of mine in Washington overnight, and some who are in the administration, some who are on Capitol Hill. And the reality is a lot of people are wondering right now exactly where this is going to end up. You're completely right to say that a lot of this hasn't been decided. What the president has said is that he's prepared to have a look at the deal. Well, that's what a reasonable person would do. Of course, he should be prepared to have a look at the deal. My own view, as you know, is that I think this is a bad deal for the United Kingdom. I have to think it's a bad deal for the United States, but that's not my responsibility. That's the Americans' responsibility to look at it. And so I wouldn't be doing it. But you know, for the president to be polite while the prime minister's in the room, I think is the bare minimum of sort of diplomatic courtesy. So let's wait and see exactly what comes.
Yeah, no, listen, I've been saying let's wait and see for about 2 weeks now, because last week, you know, we were being inundated with sort of lefties who were complaining that Trump was rowing everybody out of the deal to sort Ukraine out, and that he was only sucking up to Vladimir Putin. Now we've got Volodymyr Zelensky flying to the US and hopefully meeting up with Trump today to sign a deal for the distribution of some of the mineral content of what's under the ground in Ukraine. So I think, you know, whatever anybody thinks that Trump is doing, he appears to be running the game, doesn't he? He appears to be kind of, you know, dictating the terms, really.
Well, read what the reports are on this Ukraine deal at the moment. Now, it's early stages. It's all slightly rumour and hearsay. It's all in the media rather than on diplomatic cables, if you see what I mean. But the deal appears to be a long-term economic relationship with Ukraine, which, you know, that's not an unreasonable thing to do. Look, a shakedown of a partner or an ally would be a terrible thing to do, but establishing a long-term economic relationship with a partner or an ally in order to make sure that everybody understands why you're there and what's in it for everybody is not an unreasonable thing to do. So let's look at the terms of the deal. I mean, I keep hearing that, you know, somehow Trump is the devil and he's an idiot. Well, I'm afraid I don't buy that.
No, me neither.
President of the United States twice by being an idiot.
Right.
And there are various different ways in which he can do some pretty good things. Now, you know, I'm also aware that the tone that he brought to Munich, to the security conference, and the way that he's spoken about Putin leaves me worried, frankly. But let's be honest, these are these are difficult things to achieve, and he's got his own way of dealing with them. So let's see what the proof is in the pudding, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I mean, as far as what's happening on the ground in Ukraine, I mean, I don't suppose anything's changed really in the past 2 weeks, but there's certainly likely to be, I would say, people in Ukraine who don't want to keep fighting and keep losing their young sons and perhaps their young daughters to a fight that at the moment they don't really seem capable of winning.
Look, there is absolutely no question that everybody wants the war to be over. And let's be very, very clear that the war could end tomorrow if Putin stopped murdering Ukrainians, right? There is only one person who's invaded Ukraine. There's only one person who's invaded its neighboring state, and that's Russia. That's Putin, who has invaded Ukraine. All this talk about sort of the Ukrainians provoked it or NATO provoked it is complete rubbish. Absolute rubbish. The Ukrainians didn't provoke it any more than the Georgians did, the Estonians did, or many other of Russia's neighbours did. It's complete lies. What is true, however, is that many young people are dying, and we want to stop that. Now, the country that has lost most people so far is Russia. They've lost between 700 and 800,000 people killed and injured. Now, that is a huge number, and it is certainly true that the Russian economy is collapsing. Now, what we need to do is to make sure that Putin is not allowed a pause that allows him to regroup, rearm, and come back fighting again in 26 or 27 or 28, but instead that we have a deal that holds. And that's what is so important. That's why we need to make sure this is a deal that works for everybody, that protects Ukraine, that gets Russia out of the occupation and stops the Ukrainian people being killed.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to Sir Gerald Howarth yesterday, and rather disappointingly, he was one of those who says we shouldn't be appeasing Putin, we shouldn't be moving to stop the war. What we should be doing is basically pushing Putin back and fighting more and giving more money to Ukraine so they can lose even more people. And I said, well, I think that, you know, the time has passed on that one, hasn't it? And he doesn't seem to think, and there are many people who agree with him, that you can't sort of pen Putin in. I think you can. I mean, I think if you do the you know, you talk about the peace deal, whatever it may be, and you either have a commercial operation going on in Ukraine from America, which would mean he would stay out of it, or you would somehow you know, get some commitment from him about, you know, countries joining NATO if he ever tries to attack them, that kind of thing. You know, there are ways, surely, of handling Putin which don't involve having a war with him.
Well, I would hope you were right. I mean, the problem with your argument, Mike, is that it's Putin who started the war, right? And, you know, I know you would never argue that we should capitulate in front of a dictator. We shouldn't be just surrendering in front of dictators. And what Putin has done is invade a foreign country and murder its citizens. Now, the question is, what do you do now, not how you could have done it before? Now, I don't think there is any way that Putin is going to go back to Moscow and say, oh, well, that's all right then. You know, I'm now going to stay in the Kremlin and not do anything else. You know, he has already announced very, very clearly that he believes the whole of the Warsaw Pact is somehow part of his area of influence, that the old Russian Empire that we used to call the Soviet Union, which includes, don't forget, 3 NATO countries, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, should be part of Russia again. You know, he is very, very expansionist in everything that he says. If he wins, if he feels that he's winning, he will keep pushing. And, you know, this is one of those moments where the crocodile only gets hungrier with the eating. Yeah. You know, the reality is we have to make sure we are resisting Putin, not just for the Ukrainians, although that's important, because, Mike, you and I both know that he has been murdering people here in the United Kingdom, in Salisbury, in London, been murdering people across Europe too.
But isn't part of that attitude of his born out of the fact that when he did go into Georgia, when there was a problem there, when he did go into...
Sorry, he caused the problem in Georgia.
Well, yeah, but I mean, according to Peter Hitchens, the Georgians also went into Russia, you know, so it depends who you talk to. But then, as well, you've got what happened in 2014 in Crimea, when nobody really did anything to stop him, and there was no real reaction from the West, and so that kind of encouraged him to perhaps do what he's doing now. And maybe if there was a way of penning, and when I say penning him in, I don't mean physically, I just mean, you know, if there's some kind of deal that can be done which says that if you do this, this will happen, and so you don't do it, there must be some way of coming up with a deal like that, surely.
Look, I mean, that's really what we tried to do in the Budapest Accords of 1994, where 4 countries agreed to Ukraine's borders, and Ukraine agreed to disarm with its, you know, hand over its nuclear missiles, and that one of the signatories of that, guaranteeing today's borders of Ukraine, was Russia. Yeah. That was one of the guarantees. And by the way, President Putin himself repeated his approval of the Budapest Accords in the 2000s.
Yeah.
So this isn't some sort of historic deal. This is something that Putin himself has signed up to.
Right.
Now,
but would he not say that since that deal was signed, though, there was more countries joining NATO?
Well, there haven't been. So, I mean, it's,
Well, we've had two just recently. I mean, when we just had
but they
Finland.
only joined after.
Yeah.
Sorry, they only joined after he had invaded Ukraine.
Sure.
So that's a sort of, it's not quite a fair argument. Look, I agree with you on Crimea, but Putin invaded and still occupies, by the way, in South Ossetia and Abkhazia, two large areas. I think it's about 40% of Georgia. He has snatched and still holds an Estonian border guard who was snatched in 2007. He's been attempting to assassinate political leaders in the Balkans, including the Prime Minister of Montenegro. I mean, this has been going on for ages. In fact, recently there were explosions and fires in the Czech Republic, and we think possibly even in the United Kingdom, connected to Russian overseas activity. This is a form of a terror state. I mean, it's a mafia gang with a petrol station attached that's calling itself a country and a government. It's not. It's a complete criminal enterprise, and Putin is the criminal in chief.
Interesting stuff. Listen, Tom, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. We must do it more often. Tom Tugendhat, Conservative MP for Tunbridge, who's also, of course, a man that knows a thing or two about the defence of the realm.